Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, níbi wọ́n ti ń dábìí ẹ̀dùn tí wọ́n ń rọ̀ bí òwú. Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, láti ń gbóhùn sáfẹ́fẹ́, láti ń dábìí ẹ̀dùn tá ń rọ̀ bí òwú. Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV, ọgbọ́n ń bẹ, òye ń bẹ, ìdánilẹ́kọ̀ọ́ lóríṣiríṣi ní Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV. Ẹ máa wò ó, ẹ máa gbọ́.
Mo kí gbogbo ojú tó wò mí káàkiri ayé, lọ́kùnrin lóbìnrin lọ́mọdé lágbà nínú eléyìí. Mo kí wa pa kú dédé àsìkò yìí. Àsìkò bójú ọjọ́ ti rí ẹ̀ẹ́dọ́dún bí bó ló ti rí lọ́dọ̀ ti yín. Ẹ káàárọ̀, ẹ káàsán, ẹ kúrọ̀lẹ́, ẹ káalẹ́, ẹ kú dédé àsìkò tí a wà. Ojú tẹ́ fi wò mí ò ní fọ́, etí tẹ́ sì fi gbọ́ mi, etí náà ní di lágbára Ọlọ́run bàbá òkè. Ọ̀rọ̀ tó lọ náà lètò tẹ́ ẹ já sí lórí ìkànnì bàbá Gbàgede Ìmọ̀ TV lówùúrọ̀ yìí. Ẹ wá nǹkan fìdílé tàbí kẹ́ fìdílé nǹkan kẹjá jọjọ gbádùn ètò tá a gbédé lónìí. Àwọn embassies wa kọ̀ọ̀kan ìtó wà Saudi, ìtó wà ní London, ìtó wà káàkiri Western region ló fowó ẹ̀rá bẹ́ẹ̀. Wọ́n ti gbà fún Nàìjíríà. Ta ló gbà? Ọmọ Yorùbá ẹgbẹ́ wa. Tí wọ́n bá fẹ́ ṣàbúrú kan wá ti Yorùbá sí i. Tí ẹ náà bá dẹ̀ ti wà nípò tó ti fún nípò, orí àwú ayàkalẹ̀ Yorùbá síta. Ṣátìkú lẹ fẹ́ gbé síbẹ̀ sí ni àbí Peter Rufai kí lórúkọ ti Kaduna Rufai tí ó lẹ fẹ́ gbé síbẹ̀ fún wa. Rufai tó dùn gangan ló dìdí sí Guadeli kó gbogbo àwọn Fúlàní tó ń pa wá lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ yìí ológun ọwọlé kò dẹ̀ deny. Ìyẹn ló wá fọ́ọ̀mù association lẹ́yìn lọ bá ṣe secretary. Ìyẹn ló sáré kiri ẹ́tàskẹ́tà lẹ́ bá ṣe secretary. Gbogbo àwọn ọmọ yín tẹ́ kó tira wọ́n kígbe páwọn fẹ́ kúrò láàrin Fúlàní yẹn lẹ́yìn àdọ́. Nígbà tí wọ́n máa lu Abíọ́lá, tí wọ́n máa bàtà Abíọ́lá jẹ́, Ṣónẹ́kàn ni wọ́n gbé dìde. Ṣónẹ́kàn kọ̀ kò gbéjọba Fábíọ́lá, tábàṣà fi wá gbébọn sí létí. Yorùbá, we were back to square one again. Wọ́n dá wa padà ní Abacha pa bótò. Kí lẹ rí ṣe sí? Ó kọ́kọ́ fi ìyàwó Abíọ́lá lánu. Wọlé Ṣóyínká tàṣírí lẹ́nìí. Submarine ló gbà sálọ. Ọlọ́run ló yọ. Tipẹ́tipẹ́ làbá ti gbàgbé Wọlé Ṣóyínká náà. Gbàtà Abíọ́lá kú, Haúsá ní dandan. Tí Abacha kú, Haúsá ní dandan àfi Abíọ́lá náà kú. Wọ́n fún tíìmù, wọ́n rẹ̀ ní ẹlẹ́ni sọ́run àpàpàǹdodo. Kí ni Yorùbá ní ṣe sí? Wọ́n ṣẹ̀ wá bẹ̀rẹ̀ pẹ̀lú wa, wọ́n wá tún padà lọ mú Ọbásanjọ́ ègé. Wọ́n tún fi gbé wa mọ́ra. Ẹjọ́ tó Ọbásanjọ́ fi lọ́dún mẹ́jọ kí l'achievement ẹ̀. Kí ni Yorùbá rí mú o, kí la rí mú bọ̀? We got nothing. Ó tún gbé fún Fúlàní padà. This is how they will be rotating themselves láàrin wa o. Wọ́n yìí máa rotate ara wọn rẹ̀. Tó bá jẹ́ pé lóòótọ́ ni Yorùbá mean business, àsìkò tá a mọ̀ rèé. Wọ́n tún ti ń kóra wọn jọ o. Before you know it, 2027 we are back to square one. Yorùbá ní láti rorí bàbá Ògúndé ṣé bàbá tó ti kọrin yẹn. Barrister náà sọ bẹ́ẹ̀, bàbá wa Uba tó Ògúndé lọ́jọ́sí tó kú lọ́jọ́sí. Kọ́lọ́run kó dẹ̀lẹ̀ fẹ́ níré o. Nígbà tó kọ Yorùbá tó wọ́n pèrè Yorùbá ronú. Àṣebí Yorùbá nìkan náà ń bá wí, kì í ṣe Yorùbá nìkan náà ń bá wí. Ọmọ Nàìjíríà lápapọ̀ náà bá wé o, tàwúsá ti Yíbò ti Yorùbá wa ẹ̀ wá gbọ́rọ̀ o. Kórí wa pé Yorùbá, ẹ jẹ́ kórí wa pé we are in problem. Serious problem now. Our refusal to see the truth, to see the light when we supposed to see it. A máa padà sí square one tá a bá ṣọ́ra o. Ẹ̀yin ọba wa ẹ̀ẹ́dẹ̀jọ́. Ẹgbẹ́ òṣèlú tí sàpá kan. Nígbà tí ìran ìtì ní problem, ó ní ìgbà tí àwọn ọba wa ti ń ṣòṣèlú. ẹ lọ wo north àwọn bá wọn máa dúró lórí ẹsẹ̀ méjèèjì ni their demand must be fulfilled by any government. ẹ lọ wo lẹ Yíbò wọ́n máa dúró lórí ẹsẹ̀ wọn méjèèjì ní nǹkan tó fẹ́ fúnra wọn gbọ́dọ̀ mú wá sí ìmúṣẹ. láwa Yorùbá bá a ṣe láwọn ọba kan tó ń jà sàgbà tó láwọn lọ lórí gbogbo ilẹ̀ Yorùbá lára wọn kan tó jẹ́ pé wọ́n lo Àbújá lọ gbowó kò sí tó kàn wọ́n bá fẹ́ payín tó tẹ̀ let's go sir. lẹ́yìn bá ti gbàgbó ìran yìí nìkan náà ní problem. ibi tẹ́ ẹ bá ń kó wa rè o ẹ sọ fún wa mọ́ o Barrister ló sọ bẹ́ẹ̀ nínú the truth. ẹ jẹ́ ká lọ gbọ́ késẹ̀tì the truth tí Barrister tó ṣe jáde nígbà yẹn. He saw every the man that saw tomorrow ni máa ń pe bàbá yẹn he saw it. 1996 ló ṣe késẹ̀tì yẹn jáde ẹ wá gbogbo tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ 2025 gbogbo nǹkan tí bàbá yẹn sọ pátá sínú the truth ló ń ṣẹlẹ̀ sí wa. àṣẹ Nàìjíríà ò tẹ̀ tí burú gbà yẹn àṣẹ ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ò tẹ̀ tí dàrú aṣáṣẹ mẹ́yẹ bọ̀ lápò ni nísìnyí àti wà ń bẹ̀ báyìí ṣé wàá tó wá lásìkò yìí ọlọ́mọdé òkèjọ́ tó wá dáadáa àwọn àsìkò kan lọ future ẹ jẹ́ tá a bá ṣọ́ra àìtètè kẹrù sọ̀rọ̀ òní àkẹtàn sáré ẹ̀yin tẹ́ ẹ jẹ́ lì tiwa tẹ́ ẹ ríran if you don't stop playing politics with our lives a máa padà sẹ́sẹ́ àárọ̀ láìpẹ́ tá a bá ṣọ́ra o 2 years péré ló kù fún wa after these 2 years níbo ni ilẹ̀ Yorùbá fẹ́ wà. Barrister ní máa pé mo wí tèmi Àyíndé o máa pé mo wí tèmi Àyíndé o máa pé mo wí tèmi gbà yẹn ṣé ó dáa tó ṣẹlẹ̀ nílẹ̀ Yorùbá sí wa yìí ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ rò pé ẹyẹ ẹ̀gà lásán ni ó ń pariwo ẹnu ni ohun tó fẹ́ jẹ ló ń wá àwa ò máa sọ tiwa.
To be calling Nigeria a country, calling Nigeria a nation. This is not an unpatriotic statement. It is a statement of facts. It is a statement of intellectual position. It is factual. But from 1914, there have been some people who are motivated by different ideologies in order to turn a diverse nations into a country or into a monolithic nation. And the question is, who is going to survive? Which ethnicities are going to be wiped out within Nigeria? I saw a particular individual that said, if Nigeria is to adopt one uniform language, what language should we adopt? Why should Nigeria adopt a uniform language? Why? Belgium did not adopt a uniform language. Switzerland did not adopt a uniform language. Those are multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic countries. Why should Nigeria adopt a uniform language? Why should the Efik Ibibio people, because they are ethnic minority within Nigeria, have to be forced to give up their ethnicity and their identity because of a colonial creation, because of the British imperialism, because we want to create and forge an inorganic Nigerian nation. So these are the realities. Why many people, which I also fall into that category, believe that the only way to prevent a fiasco, a bloody showdown in Nigeria, is for Nigeria to be restructured along ethno-linguistic lines. There are powers that be within Nigeria who do not believe that Nigeria should be along ethno-linguistic lines. There are powers that be in Nigeria who believes that they need to destroy ethnic identity in Nigeria for them to create the Nigerian of their dreams. They are in powerful positions. They are in the military. They are in politics. They are in banking sector. And that is why in Nigeria, people demonize ethnic identity. People demonize indigenous languages. People demonize indigenous identity. People demonize ethnic solidarity. People demonize ethnic consciousness. People demonize indigenous rights. That is why, from one way or the other, you look at the history of Nigeria, Whether the president is from the north or the president is from the south, is from the east, is from the west, there has been history of the Nigerian state committing genocide using state organized violence against indigenous people at different times and periods. Should we talk about the killings that was committed against the people of the Middle Belt in 1961 in the Tiv riots, where over 50,000 people of the Middle Belt were killed, missing, and tortured, and captured, and kidnapped, and jailed because they were fighting. They were asking peacefully that they need their own Middle Belt region within Nigeria. That how can you keep us and place us using the colonial construct and colonial structure of Nigeria and say we are not tenants and place us under the Sokoto Caliphate that has always maimed, kidnapped, destroyed us, our ancestors for the past 150 years? These were the questions that the people of the Middle Belt asked. And what happened? The federal government of Nigeria then, which was ruled with the NCNC-MPC merger, political alliance, crushed down and killed indigenous people of the Middle Belt. Should we also talk about the Ogoni massacre, where the indigenous people of Ogoni, which are currently in River State, were saying, how can, look at our environment, look at our land, look at our environment, look at our land. It has been polluted, it has been destroyed due to oil spillage. How can you now say you want to take our oil, you want to take our gas, you want to take our resources without taking care of the indigenous people that own this land, that have been fishing, their means of livelihood has been destroyed? What sort of federalism do we practice in Nigeria that does not put into recognition the indigenous people that own a land? That is internal imperialism that we've packaged to call patriotism. That's not patriotism, it is imperialism. But what did General Sani Abacha do? He killed thousands of people of Ogoni. And that great man with other wonderful leaders of Ogoni people, they were all jailed. That is another version, that is an example of genocide of indigenous people, because Nigeria refuses to understand that Nigeria is a country of ethnic nations. It is wrong to refer to the Yoruba race as a tribe. Yoruba race is an ethnic nation on its own, with over 100 million people across the world. It is wrong to be calling the Fulani a tribe. It is wrong to be calling the Hausa people a tribe. It is a misnomer to be referring to the Igbos as a tribe. Those things are wrong. They are ethnic nations in their rights, which is why we need to understand this narrative. We need to understand this sentiment, because it is the inability of them. I want to be very, very a little bit blunt. It is the inability of this generation of Black people all across the world, whether from the Caribbeans, to understand the world. That is why, and learn from the mistakes of other civilizations. That is why we've been at the bottom of the pyramid. We are bottom parallel across when it comes to geopolitical power and geopolitical power struggle. What we only do is to make ourselves happy and be telling ourselves we have potentials. The world is not going to wait for us. The people we are competing with are not going to wait for us. Europe learned the hard way. For close to 900 years, Europe was doing one thing. They could not separate religion from the states. They were building empires. They were crushing dissidents, and they were annihilating minorities. I'm going to give you a good instance what the three European empires did to the Slavs, to the people of Poland. What did these three European empires do to the people of Poland? After Poland was conquered 200 years ago, the Russian Empire, the German Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they came together and said, we don't need to fight about the spoils of war. And what is the spoil of war? It is Poland. Let us take each part of Poland. The Russians, you take Eastern Poland. We, the Germans, we are going to take Western Poland. And we, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, we are going to take Southern Poland. That was what they did. And the Germans and the Russians started a state-sponsored genocide against the people of Poland. The Russians started the Russification agenda, while the Germans started the Germanification agenda. Now, what was the Russification agenda? The Russification agenda was very straightforward. The language, the indigenous language of the people of Poland was banned. They were forced to bear Polish names, Russian names. They were forced to give up their land. And a lot of Russians were settled in the area of Poland, in that area of Poland. The Germans did not do, in fact, the Germans went further. Germans, they were now mass migrating a lot of ethnic Germans to settle in that area of Poland. They were making sure that if you do not have German name, and what the only name you have was Polish name, you are not going to get access to social amenities like schooling, financial services within the German Empire. They made it, they even made some policies to encourage intermarriage between Polish people and ethnic Germans in order to totally erase the Poles from that area of Germany. And it worked. Millions of Polish people were assimilated and they became Germans till this very day. Till this very day. You also look at, that's why the Austrian Empire also did the same thing. That is why there are a lot of Germans in Austria that they have Slavic origin. This was the product of the genocidal policies after Poland was conquered by these three great powers. Today I'll be focusing. So this is an example of genocidal policies. But you look at Nigeria. Nigeria was, Chief Obafemi Awolowo argued and was saying we must not make the same mistake of Poland, of Europe. This was what was happening in Europe until the First World War and the Second World War. It was after the Second World War that the European powers have to sit down and say they were forced. It was America that forced them. The days of empire is over. The ethnic nations within Europe, the creation of the modern nation states, they must have their own country. So that was what led to the emergence of countries like Luxembourg, Latvia, and all these Lithuania, all these countries. That was what led to their emergence. And you have to understand that when we say that Europe, after Europe went to war, we are not talking about a civil war, a tribal war. We are talking about a world war. A world war. It was a world war, the First World War, that broke the Ottoman Empire into pieces. The breakage of the Ottoman Empire liberated a lot of Greek states in Cyprus, liberated the Greeks, liberated the Armenians, liberated the Arabs, liberated even some of the Persians. So you have to understand that for many, we must not go the route of bloody implosion for us to understand that we need to do the needful and understand our peculiarity as a country of many ethnic nations. This is why a region in Nigeria is trying to bring medieval Sharia law, theocracy, across in a country that is practicing democracy. And when they try and defend that, they can't even defend it because they look crazy. Because how do you come around in a country like Nigeria that was built on Western civilization, and what you're talking about is you want to impose Sharia law. You want to, where you still have caliphate, you have the Boshe or Bonu, Islamic Empire, and you are still going about telling yourself you are a patriotic Nigeria. It is something that's fundamentally missing. But these are the contradictions between the Nigerian states. These are the contradictions between Nigeria. These are the reality within Nigeria that we need to break down. Nigeria is beyond what you see. Nigeria is beyond the price of food, food and gari. What you have in Nigeria is beyond the ephemerals. It is a clash of civilization, a bloody and ruthless clash of civilization. And that is why some people believe that homogenizing Nigeria through any means necessary is what is going to create the Nigeria of their dreams. That is why when people say I'm a detribalized Nigeria, it makes no sense. When people say I'm a detribalized Nigeria, look at them as people that have mental illness. Because how can you be genociding yourself because of a British creation? The Scottish people have been in the United Kingdom for more than 800 years. You will never see a Scotch say, I'm a detribalized Scot. McTominay, the former Manchester United player, is Scottish. And if you see, they call him the great Scotsman, even though he holds a British passport. The Scottish identity is like a tribal or ethnic identity within the United Kingdom. You look at Bales, that former footballer that played for Tottenham and later Real Madrid, Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale is Welsh. The Welsh are the original indigenous people of that area called United Kingdom before it was conquered by the Anglo-Saxons, who are Germanic people that came from mainland Europe. You need to understand, well, he's going to say, I am Welsh, even though he holds a British passport. So when has it become a crime for you to say, I am Yoruba, even though I hold a Nigerian passport? That does not mean you are not patriotic to Nigeria. We need to understand what is going on. In 1970s, there were debates, constitutional debates, as regards to Nigeria. And one of the suggestions of the Northern, of the Arewa nationalists at that conference was that Nigeria should equate ethnic identity to religious identity. And they were trying to lobby the Yoruba people, Yoruba Muslims, into that agenda. The Yoruba Muslims walked out and said, no, we know what you're trying to do. You are trying to use us to build your caliphate, your power, and turn the rest and subjugate the entire Yoruba race, subjugate the rest of Nigeria. That is why they say, oh, the Muslims, oh, we the Muslims, oh, you're going to see the Fulanis, oh, we the Muslims. They have equated the Fulani hegemony with Islam. The same thing the Ottoman Empire started doing. When the Ottoman Empire conquered most of the Arab world, and they felt that, how are they going to keep the Arabs in check? They invented pan-Islamism, which was you are Islam first. When that was what they were using to keep the Arabs in check. What they were doing, using to keep the Armenian Greeks, who are Christians, the Armenians who are Christians, the Greeks who are Christians, the Hungarians who are Christians, many of the places in the Balkans who are Orthodox and Catholic Christians, they were pushing Ottomanism, which was, it doesn't matter, maybe you are a Christian or atheist, you are, once you are in the Ottoman Empire, you must be loyal to the Ottoman Empire. It was called Ottomanism. So in Eastern Europe and the Balkans, the Ottoman Empire was using Ottomanism as a means of coercion within the empire. In the Arab world, they were using pan-Islamism. So in the 19th century, the Arabs started to ask questions that started to question the Sultanate of Constantinople, of Istanbul, that you are actually, which was the Ottoman Empire, you are actually using pan-Islamism to promote Turkish supremacy. We are Arabs, but you are subjugating us. You are killing us. You've destroyed our leadership. You've made yourself the custodian of Islam. And this is not true. And that was how different nationalisms started happening across the Arab world. In Algeria, in Libya, in Egypt, in Syria, in in the Arabian Peninsula. So when the First World War started, and the British and the French, they knew that if the Ottoman Empire was able to rally the entire Arab forces, it would be very difficult for them to defeat Turkey, to defeat the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottoman Empire also knew that they need pan-Islamism in order to be able to win the war. So what the Sultan did in the Ottoman Empire was said that the First World War was a war between the House of Islam and against the infidels. And he declared a jihad that all Arabs, all the Muslims in the Ottoman Empire, all the Muslims throughout the world must come together and join them. Because the Ottoman Empire was also trying to use the Muslims in British India and make them turn the British in Muslim India, the Muslims in British India, the Muslims in British Indonesia, and make them turn against the British, because there were a lot of Indian, a lot of Pakistanis, Bangladeshi Muslim soldiers within the British army. So Britain did something. Britain went to all the secessionist organizations and groups within the Ottoman Empire, people that have been dissidents, that have run to Europe to escape, to America, that have escaped, that have run away and told them, look, if you support us and join us to fight against the Ottoman Empire, we are going to liberate the Arabs out of the clutches of the Turkish people, and we are going to give Arabs their political freedom. That was what they said. That was where people like the current ruling dynasty of Saudi Arabia, Al Saud, that was how they became kings. It was because they became rebel leaders. They became rebel leaders. I want to cite an example. Just imagine Tompolo. The British comes to Tompolo and say, look, Tompolo, if you join us and fight against Nigeria, once the battle is over, we are going to make you the new king of the entire Ijaw race. That was what they did to a lot of Arab militants and rebel leaders. The same thing you see currently in Syria, where the European powers, they were able to use a former Al-Qaeda leader in the name person of al-Jolani to declare war, to wage war against Assad. That once you help us to destroy the dynasty of Assad and fight, we give you the weapons, we give you, but just do our bidding. We will make you the new leader of Assad, of Syria. Al-Jolani and Assad, they are both Muslims, but they were able to play against each other because of interest. That was how the Arabs, they were able to propagate and propel and fuel. The British financed Arab imperial nationalism, which was what they used to destroy the backs of the Ottoman Turks in North Africa and the Middle East. That was how Turkey was destroyed in the First World War. And that was how you see, that was what led post-1918, the Sykes-Picot lines, the Sykes-Picot division of the Middle East. That was how countries like Libya, Algeria, Syria, Lebanon came about to be. And that is where the genesis of the Palestine-Israel conflict started. Because what the British and the French did was to cut up the lands, the territories of the Ottoman Empire, and give it to whoever the pleases that did their bidding. That was exactly what's happening. So, going back to the issue of Nigeria, there are people that believe that there's the ideology of the core north. But I mean the core north, the Arewa Islamic nationalists, is that political Islam is a potent tool of homogenizing disparate ethnic nations. This is why they talk about caliphate, they talk about the Islamic caliphate, they talk about detribalization. But we still understand that within this power structure, the Fulanis are on top while the rest are down. In 2023, the current vice president of Nigeria was complaining that it was not the reason why a lot of people voted against him in the Northwest was because he was Kanuri and Atiku was Fulani. So they preferred a Fulani man than a Kanuri. He complained bitterly of tribalism. It's in the newspaper. People can read it. So you have to understand that even in the Islamic history, there have been many cases of ethnic war and ethnic conflicts. Which has been going on for the past 1,400 years, and it's still going on in different places. So the pan-Islamism is a lie. The Balkanization and the fall of the Ottoman Empire, where Arab nationalism was used to destroy the Ottoman Empire, which was controlled by Turkish, is a good example that pan-Islamism cannot overcome pan-ethnicism. So, genocide, the use of force to keep disparate ethnic nations in a united bloc, you need force, you need destruction. It needs to be destructive. You need to be able to kill as many people as possible, jail as many dissidents as possible, create demographic changes, you have to be able to displace people in order to create a united, homogeneous nation out of a diverse nation. You need chaos. That is why anybody talking about revolution in Nigeria, we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful of people who shout revolution, because it was a French nationalist, the French Catholic nationalists that organized revolutionaries, that organized the revolution of the 19th century. They did two things. They abolished the monarchy of the Charles dynasty, the Charles. So they destroyed the monarchy of France. That was the first thing they did. And they destroyed the ethnic diversity of France. So before the 19th century revolution in France, France was very diverse, even though there was a huge bloc, which was a French-speaking majority. After that revolution, all the diverse, the Bretons, the Occident that speak different languages, especially in southern France, they were forced to give up their language in order to create that French Republic. So there are many people who see this as a way out, this bloody route, this bloody system as their own system of nation building. We have them in our midst. They will say, "Oh, let us adopt Hausa language as our national language. Let us adopt Pidgin language as our national language." We have them in our midst. We must not underestimate genocidal people in our midst. Showore, as one said, let us adopt Hausa language as a national language. So I'm not surprised when I see him going around and buying down across to different emirs in the north, because this is the kind of neoliberal genocidal maniac in our midst, and they always hide their illusion, their illusion and delusion under two major ideologies: pan-neoliberalism and globalism and pan-Africanism. That's three: neoliberalism, globalism, and pan-Africanism. You're going to say, "Oh, we are all the same. We are all the same." But these are not founded. In Europe, we cannot afford to waste 200 years of our lives. We cannot afford to waste 200 years of our lives figuring out what Europe has figured out 100 years ago, after wasting 800 years of their life fighting and killing each other. So the Yoruba people and other ethnicities in Nigeria that understand what this ideology of ethno-linguistic federalism is all about, we need to organize ourselves and educate our youth. Because a lot of our youth, they do not have academic historical knowledge. They do not have geopolitical knowledge. They do not understand the history of Nigeria. They do not, what they don't know that Nigeria is not working. And they believe that we need to change leadership. It is not. You look at Nigeria, during the time of President Goodluck Jonathan, because a particular section of this country wanted power at all costs, they weaponized and politicized terrorism and insecurity in Nigeria. One of the reasons that they used to be able to push against Jonathan was insecurity. A Southern president was insecurity. What did they do? What are they doing against Tinubu again? They are saying it is insecurity. Kidnapping left, right, and center. They are creating chaos everywhere. And it seems the government cannot even be able to stop this issue. So we even saw the son of Atiku saying that we need to stop the building of the roads. The coastal road should be stopped. And the money meant for the coastal road should become and be used to take care of insecurity in the core north. That is how they think. That is how they think. The South needs to suffer. Our life needs to be on hold because we need to take care of the North. So it is this quagmire that we find ourselves. And which is why we've always said that Nigeria is not a nation, it's a country of ethnic nations. Some of you actually wonder, why is it so easy for some sections of this country, despite the fact that millions of their people are walking across the streets, no food, nothing to show about it, unemployed, poverty is rife, and they still use millions and billions every year, every month to conduct mass wedding. They don't even enforce education. They promote, they've infused religion into the state, and they are pumping money into the religion. You know, I heard the governor of Sokoto said the number one priority of them is to priority of Sokoto state government is to take care of Islam. Then the second thing is to continue is insecurity. Now tell me, how are they going to when you have such a region and a block thinking in that way, that such a people are going to be in the 21st century? Look, I know many of you look at Dubai, Qatar, all these Gulf countries that are theocratic monarchies, authoritarian monarchies. What the only thing they have now? Qatar has merely 400,000 citizens. The citizens of Qatar are less than 1 million, and they have almost unlimited gas reserve. They have more than 1 trillion assets in the Western world. They have so much money that they don't know what to do with it. So the 80% of the population of Qatar are foreigners. So the Indian citizens, so even in the UAE, Qatar, and many of these Gulf countries, oil-rich Gulf countries, they don't even have enough military, enough manpower to have their military. So many of them are now creating mercenaries, Colombian mercenaries to come and fight for them, Indian mercenaries all across the world. You go and look at many of their mercenary companies, security companies have their shops, their offices in Dubai, in Qatar, in Doha, in many of in Saudi Arabia, because they have the money, but they do not have the manpower. For instance, UAE, for instance, has a lot of Colombian mercenaries, thousands of Colombian mercenaries in its ranks, which is used as a fighting force. You look at UAE, for instance, when they wanted to go and invade Yemen, the UAE did not have money. What did they do? They don't have the manpower rather, but they had the money. They brought out the billions. and imported RSF fighters. Now, I've spoken a lot about the RSF fighters from Sudan. The RSF fighters from Sudan these are reintegrated bandits, reintegrated terrorists who were used by the government of Sudan, who are also totalitarian Sharia apologists who wanted to Islamize and impose Sharia over the non-Arab population in the south, where the oil and gas of Sudan was located. So they brought in thousands and thousands of fighters. Many of them were nomads, axemen, people with no education. The only skill they knew how to do was to kill and butcher people. Islamists. And that was the people that UAE funded, gave them money, pumped billions into the warlords, and they were able to use them to fight in Yemen against the Houthis. Against the Houthis. We must not forget the Houthis are Arabs, the UAE are Arabs. These bandits that are being used to go and fight that were enrolled in the RSF are also Arabs. So you need to understand the way the world works. It's a brutal and bloody world because of the interest for power and control and politics. Unfortunately for us in Nigeria, we are in a country with people that are hell-bent on imposing their own worldview on the rest of us. And we have a naive and almost an illiterate population who do not understand what is at stake, who do not understand that we are almost on the verge of destruction. Under President Buhari, President Buhari was trying to weaponize the atrocities of his ethnic kinsmen in order to create a Fulani empire in Nigeria. Is the bitter truth. When he was asking for all the states in the south to give up lands in order to settle the killer herdsmen, a lot of political jobbers and opportunists, social climbers, were going about, especially in the south, and saying, "Oh, we have to look at the bigger goal. If we go about, if we accept this policy, the economy is going to get better." You know, we are talking about the dispossession of lands and circling people armed with AK-47 and giving them billions in allocations in strategic places across the south and creating colonies. It is basically destruction. You are creating outposts. This was what the Russians were doing in the USSR. This was what they did in Tajikistan. This was what they did in Kazakhstan. This was what they did in Nagorno-Karabakh, which was creating Russian outposts. This was how Russia was able to get access to the Black Sea. It was they started outposts before they started expanding. This is empire building. You create outposts. When the Europeans wanted to take over the indigenous lands in North America, in South America, they started with creating outposts. When the British, the Dutch wanted to start taking lands of indigenous people, of the Zulus, of the Bantus, of the Hottentots, the Bushmen in South Africa, they created Cape Town. It was outposts. They first created outposts. When the British wanted to take over the entire Nigeria and take over all our lands and resources, they created a colony. It was a trading outpost. They always start with an outpost. So in Nigeria, Buhari had the guts to say what to create Fulani outpost all across Nigeria. And they still come around and tell you, you must not talk because it is one Nigeria. That is not one, it is weaponized Nigeria. And we thank God for a lot of our elders that stood up, that damned the consequences and spoke loud and clear to be able to defeat these monsters. We would have been in trouble because they would have used genocide. Because displacing people from their own land and other people occupying it is a form of genocide. It's a form of genocide. I also remember in the First Republic, one of the policies of Sir Ahmadu Bello was Arewanization stroke Hausanization of the northern region. To get a job in the northern region civil service, you need to Arewanize it. You need to Hausanize it, which was the Arewanization and Hausanization of the northern region. So many indigenous people gave up their language in order to be able to be reintegrated into the Arewa fold. The only people that refused were the people in Kogi, in Kokorende, Kogi, Kwara, and Benue states. Those are the three major non-Hausa speaking states that has been categorized in the north. And you see that there's a current reawakening by the Middle Belt nationalists that are fighting back because democracy gives them a voice. Under the military, they are crushed. They are not allowed to even have a voice to be able to say self-determine within the Nigerian Federation. Because anybody that says that the Middle Belt is not north, to them is against their one nation mantra. Don't forget, the mantra of the core north was one north, one monolithic north. How can you have one monolithic north if you don't have the intention of killing and wiping them out? Which is why the killings and the wiping out of indigenous people in the core north and displacement of millions of people into refugee camp is not a mistake. It is intentional. Which is why it is it's uncalled for Nigeria not to have, for the different ethnic nations for Nigeria to be running a centralized policing system where there are deep ethnic mistrust within this country. And we do not even want to talk about it. We just paper over the cracks. It was a killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa that made the Niger Delta people, the ethnic minorities in that area called South, to take up arms against the Nigerian government. Until date, we don't have a solution to date. The Niger Delta people, it was only 2 times that they took arms against the Nigerian states. In the First Republic and the Fourth Republic. In the First Republic, what did they do? In the First Republic, they took up arms against the Igbo-led Nigerian federal government and the Eastern region, which was under the leadership of Colonel Odumego Ojukwu, who later went to go and found and declare Biafra and trying to annex the resources of the ethnic minorities, where the Ijaw people stood up, led by Major Jasper Dekaporo, and said, why do you want to annihilate us and subjugate us? Why do you want to co-opt us? Why do you want to annex us into this country, into your phantom country? Why can't we, the ethnic minorities in the South that are rich in mineral resources and oil and gas, also have our own region, have our own states, have political power over our states? The Igbo intellectuals in the First Republic hated any form of ethnic identity or ethnic consciousness. Anybody that says, oh, I am Ijaw, I would like to maintain my space and land in Nigeria, in fact, you will see them calling their star person all sorts of names. That was the policy of the NCNC of Azikwe. That was what he was doing. When Chief Obafemi Awolowo created Egbe Amoduduwa, the great Chief Obafemi Awolowo created a socio-cultural Yoruba organization for the Yoruba people in order to make the Yoruba voice cohesive within the Nigerian Federation, because he saw the dangers. He saw that the Fulanis were trying to recreate the Sokoto Caliphate in the north, and he saw that the Igbos were trying to create an Igbo empire in the south and in Nigeria. Now, the Igbo State Union has been funded and by many Igbo intellectuals, where they were Igbo first and protecting Igbo interests. When the Yoruba organization was formed, Chief Azikwe was busy threatening on radio. He was threatening in the face of newspaper There was no radio then. That Egbe Omorodua must be crushed. That he will not give up until Egbe Omorodua is totally annihilated and all its members destroyed. He didn't stop, and he achieved his ambition in 1966. That was one of the first things that his fellow Igbo man did in the person of Aguyin Rossi, where he banned Egbe Omorodua. For what reason? Why should an Igbo man be dictating what the Yoruba people should do with our consciousness? It is still because of lack of boundaries. It is the disrespect that some ethnic nations have in Africa have towards each other, which is causing conflicts non-stop, which is why I see a lot of Pan-Africanists as fraudsters. These are people that promote dictatorship. And we must not, if you look at people, if you look at Islamists, radical Islamists, Al-Qaeda apologists, ISIS apologists, they are within us, we see them on Twitter spaces, we see them everywhere. What they believe in, you say they're always saying they are Pan-Africanists, they are always siding with neoliberals, because the neoliberals are the biggest tools for Islamism all over the world. It was the neoliberals that destroyed the Shah of Iran. It was liberal students in universities. That's why we must not underestimate the damage liberal Yoruba youth in universities can cause. These people are ruthless. They will destroy and kill their parents because of this globalist, neoliberal identity, which is why the West, the conservative West, have not taken it upon themselves to go into campuses and crack down. When I mean crack down on radical leftists. Because they are the ones, that is where the leaders of tomorrow is being created. That is where that is why you need to be able to protect your future. Excuse me. That is why you need to protect your future. Because without that, we are going to lose our destiny. We are going to lose our future. So we need to understand where we are going. Now, let me talk about Turkey. Turkey and Russia. This should not take me 10 minutes. Because this is a very, very expansive topic. It's a very, very expansive topic that needs to be properly broken down. The weapon that has been deployed against indigenous people in Nigeria, it is not a gun to our head. It is not about constitution. It is ignorance. This generation is ignorant. It's ignorant. And there are people that are purposely weaponizing that ignorance for their own political aim. So it is normal for you to see a lot of people saying all sorts of terrible things about TYF. It is normal for a lot of people to see saying terrible things about what we stand for. Because what we stand for is the total liberation. It is not for revolution, but the intellectual liberation of indigenous people in Nigeria from being annihilated. Because it is two ways. Those that want to use genocide as a tool of homogenizing the disparate diverse nations instead of practicing ethno-linguistic federalism that was suggested by Chief Obafemi Awolowo. They have their own, they will end up throwing this great nation into a state of chaos. Now, let me tell you what Turkey did. That was when I'm so happy that we've been able to shut down Moghalu from openly professing his genocidal fantasies against the rest of us within Nigeria. One of the examples, one of the role models that Kingsley Moghalu, a former presidential candidate within Nigeria, one of the things he said is this. He said that Nigeria should make examples. Look at the role, use the father Kemal, Ataturk Kemal as a role model in Turkey. What did Ataturk Kemal do? Ataturk Kemal was responsible for the genocide of more than 2 million Armenians, millions of Greeks, and millions of Kurdish people in order to create modern Turkey. After the fall of the Ottoman Empire, many ethnic nations, which is why I understand what what Middle Belt is currently doing. I understand what they are doing. If the Middle Belt do not stand up and doing what they are doing now, to totally, socially, physically detach themselves from the core north, they will be annihilated in any post-Nigeria or within Nigeria. It has happened before in Turkey. So any Middle Belt that is trying to play one north politics, you are going to be annihilated. That was what Turkey did. The ethnic Turks did to the Armenians. Armenians were driven out of their homes. Armenians, old Syriac Christians, Assyrian Christians, Kurdish people, the Greeks people. I'm talking about millions of people were massacred within 3-4 years. The genocide of the indigenous people, especially in certain places close to the Black Sea, area of Anatolia, in the eastern parts, and many places in Turkey, were, is underreported. So when the Ottoman Empire fell, and the Turkish nationalists realized that the days of empire is over, if they do not find a way to find a permanent solution to the indigenous minorities in their land, in that area that they've mapped out as the modern nation state of Turkey, Turkey would never be able to have the kind of power that they currently wield. Turkey wants to have access into the Persian world. Turkey wants to have access into the Arab world. Turkey wants to have big and total access into the Black Sea. And Turkey wants to be the most powerful bloc in the Mediterranean. And Turkey also wanted to control the total other half of Constantinople, because Constantinople is the only city in Asia and in Europe. It is the connecting block between Asia and Europe. So what did they do? Genocide was the policy, because after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, in that area of modern Turkey, the ethnic Turks were just less than 50% of the population. So how can they create a modern country when they are not the overwhelming majority? So they made policies. They killed as many people as possible, chased them away from their lands, and those that remained were forced to Turkinized. A good example were the Kurdish people. They made laws and policies that the Kurdish people they gave them a different names, that they removed the Kurdish identity from the constitution and called them mountain Turks. It is the same thing being done to the Yoruba people. In South, it is the same thing, policy-driven, ethnically driven, genocidal policies by powers that be within Nigeria against the Yoruba people in the core north. Go and look at what they've done in the north. There are 2 Yoruba in Kogi, for instance. There are 3 Yoruba blocks in Kogi. We are happy that the Okun Yorubas are doing a good job in making sure that the Oworo people are now under the Okun tribal classification under the Yoruba race. That is great. But they did something also profound. The Ogorimagongo are not regarded as Yorubas. They call them Ogorimagongo, even though Ogorimagongo is not different from Ikari Akoko, it's not different from Ekmimi Akoko, it's not different from Ishu Akoko, it's not different from all the Akokos, Oba Akoko. So it is not different. So instead of calling them Akoko, Ogori Akoko, or Magongo, or calling them Yoruba, because they are Yorubas, they now said Ogori Magongo is an ethnic group.
Agede Gbàgede ìmọ̀ TV. Gbàgede ìmọ̀